Hi, I'm Randy Wooden, and welcome to another in our Edge Library series. We're into part 5 now, and this deals with questions that you can ask an employer. Not all questions are created equal, and some have actually more importance than others, and some are just merely information gathering. So I think something we can ask that could occur early on in the interview to midway through the interview is to walk me through a typical day or a typical week. Now, why do you ask that? Well, one of the main things you're trying to get here is an understanding of the shifting of duty or the amount of weight that is attached to certain aspects of the position. Also to include travel, overtime, weekends, that sort of thing. Because it's death to you to come out in an interview and say, well, do we work weekends? Of course you're not going to say that. You're not going to say, do we work overtime? Typically, those questions in a professional environment, in a salaried sort of role, and again, overtime in a salary, I understand that, but still, working over a typical 40-hour work week is almost a given for virtually any company going these days. So asking to walk me through a typical week should give you a sense for the employer's priorities as to really what you're going to be doing. It's one thing to ask it open-ended that way versus saying closed-end questions. Do we work weekends? Is there travel involved? And that sort of thing. So again, that's one way to handle that question so you can get a sense for really what the employer is envisioning with you taking this position. Something else that you might want to ask, especially if this job is one that's newly created or if it's one where you're sitting either in a panel interview or if you are interviewing with multiple people during the day and it's not simply just one and done with one person. The question is this: how do you see my position impacting your department or your role in the company? Again, you're going to find in many cases that multiple people have had input as to what this newly created position is about to do, or even if it's not newly created, they still have input on what they'd like to see come out of you. So it's good to know really what they're looking for, just like you would normally ask the employer or your boss what they're looking for. It's a good idea to ask these other people how they see this role or me impacting their job or their department. You might be surprised at what you hear, but it's a good question to ask. It gets them talking about their needs, and if you're able then to uncover those needs, now you can go about that process of selling to those needs. So again, to review, walk me through a typical week should give you a general sense for the amount of maybe drive time, the amount of overtime, the amount of weekends, do we work late, that sort of thing. It also may touch on, and another related question deals with the longer term opportunity for having to relocate. And that could be something else that may come out of that question about typical week, typical day, and then over time we may look to promote you to another position somewhere else. And the other question being dealing with how does this position impact your company or your department within the company, and specifically your position. Some good questions to ask. We have more questions, including some that you may want to avoid and why, and we'll cover those in other segments. But that'll wrap it up for this in our Edge Library series, Part 5, dealing with questions that you might want to ask the employer. I'm Randy Wooden. Thanks for watching.